Hi and welcome back. This is Gmax 1.2 for the beginning modeler, video number 31, where our focus will be build and animate gear parts. So that's the objective, at least in part 1 here, is to get started on that process. Build and animate the main gear and the nose gear parts. Hi, my name's Milton Shupe, and what I'm showing you here in the Gmax screen is the original project that I'm basing this video on. And it seems we have a pretty nice looking gear set up here. I've always had an affinity to do decent looking gear for flight sim. In the old days, people used to create what they called biscuits from 8 to 12 sides and paint them up like a tire and a wheel and call them gear. Well, those days are long gone, fortunately. So I think what I'll do, since our 3 view is really poor in the area of creating the gear parts, is we'll go over to our project and I'm going to merge in the right gear part for reference and to give us something to talk about before we get started building the left gear. So that's going to be the approach. And before we do that, we'll just show you how these are animated. They sit up in the bottom of the boom, and you might have noticed when I retracted the gear, the lower gear turned horizontally, or almost horizontally, before it was stored to keep the aerodynamics and the bulk and aerodynamic drag down on this section here. And that's why we couldn't finish up the boom earlier, is because we need to get the gear built, get it up in place before we can shape this and make sure we're covering the gear. And once we were satisfied with the way that's built, then we can cut in the gear doors. So the gear doors and all that's going to come after we build the gear. So you can notice you can see the doors opening here and the gear coming down from its horizontal state and twisting to come in a fore aft direction. And that happens in keyframes 0 through 100. That's how gear retraction works. So very similar to flaps, 0 to 100. And then in 101 to 200, you have suspension, or your oleo suspension is animated. And that's what I want to show you how to do as well. In addition, you'll notice that nose gear has a 360-degree turn in it. That animation represents a castrine nose gear or tail wheel, either way. And that's how it's done in Gmax to set up the animation. So to make it easy, we'll do the suspension on the nose gear before we do the what they call the C wheel, center wheel. Castrine animation. Had a brain fade there. Okay, so let's get over to our project here and just see where we left off. Yeah, that's where we left off. We finished up all this area back here, and so now we're kind of ready to go to work. Now you're going to notice when I pull in, I'm going to go to the left viewport here, and we're going to we'll hide everything for now, and we're going to merge in the right gear from that we were just looking at by going through these steps. And let's see, let's go to R underscore gear. That's what we're looking for. R underscore gear. Doors. Well, let's just grab anything to get the hierarchy. And we'll select hierarchy here. Right underscore gear. So when I select that with displaying the subtree and selecting the subtree, I get all the parts. So we'll just bring that in. And here it is in this retracted state. And we'll see if Yeah, that works just like it's supposed to. Now I did notice that I haven't changed this setup yet because I haven't needed to. I'm showing keyframe 0 to 100 here. Well, because we have gear in the picture, we need to change this to 200. So we're going to, as a minimum, 200. So the way you do that is go to this icon here, which is the time configuration, and come down to animation, start and end times. We'll just change that to 200 and say OK. And then that changes your scale for 200 keyframes. So now we can, instead of just going to 100, we can see the rest of the animation here. Okay, now let's leave this down for a second and bring in, let's just unhide all. Now you see where this gear is. Just to go to show you, when I started this project, I started completely fresh. I didn't rely on the other one at all. So the aircraft is in a little different position and so forth. So I need to move this gear back to where we are in this. Let's do that. Right gear is not linked to anything, of course, because we haven't taken ownership of it. We're just using it for reference. So let's just move it back and to its approximate location here. And that looks pretty good. So we're going to use all of this for reference and from the right side, and we're going to build the left side. And so I can talk about all the parts and what we need to do. So let's now unhide, or hide. Let's go up and select all of the gear. And then hide unselected. Good. Okay. The first thing we want to do is identify the parts of the main gear here that we're interested in building. And there's two I'm going to hide. Well, part of that structure, if I can select them out. We're not going to build this in the sim, or in the video, but we'll keep them around in case we want to talk about them, because they're just kind of in the way right now. Let's talk about the parts that we have here. At the top of the hierarchy, at least because it's not linked to the aircraft, we have just the animated name, right underscore gear. Now, I usually call this the upper part of the gear. It's the upper strut. At least that's how I refer to it. And when you select this upper strut, you can see that it comes down to here. And things that are attached to it are these collars and this retractor bar. And really there should be kind of a square tube or round tube bar that goes through the top of this, and it's from that it's attached up to either a nacelle or the nacelle part of that boom that we're talking about, and that's the pivot point. I have an imaginary one because it's kind of up in there and it's not seen. So I just placed a pivot where that bar would be, and when we go to retract, you'll see that it's going to retract on that from that pivot point area. Okay, but a lot of times on some aircraft you'll see that very well because it's placed down really close to the front of the door opening, and in some you won't see it so well. So in this case, I didn't see it was necessary to build it, so I just saved the polys by not building it. Okay, so we've got the, what am I calling this here? Angular strut, I guess, but it's really the retractor bar. This is attached to a mechanism that pulls, and as you can see, it's kind of animated there. It pulls it and pushes it to retract or extend the gear. So we'll animate that part too. These are just collars. They could have been built in with this, and that's probably what we're going to do when we do it. And down the next main part of that is the lower gear strut, or the oleo. I just call it lower. Don't get into proper terms here, but so we've got the top gear and the lower gear. And this is the part that's animated, that's the animated suspension. So when you do this, we get the up and down movement. And attached to that, of course, and linked to that is the axle. Make sure I can hit on it. There's not much polys in there to hit on. Let's see if I can pick it up. Here it is, axle. So the axle then is linked to the lower gear so that it will follow it when it's animated. And then we have the wheel and the tire, which are linked to the axle. Okay, pivot set for that and named appropriately, and the sim animates them. There's nothing, the tires, we don't have to do anything there other than set the pivot centered to the wheel and centered to the axle, and it's good to go. The last thing I've got on here are the things I have on here are the scissors, or the torque links, if you will, an upper and a lower. And this is kind of a connector bar that I use for the brake lines coming down, and connected brake lines to here to keep them from moving around in the wind. See that on some aircraft, depending on how the brake lines are routed. But because you have this up and down action, you got to have flexible brake hoses, and that's usually the way they do it. They run it around the torque links. So, okay, so with that, I guess we can get started. Let's go back to the left. Well, there's another little piece up here we won't bother with. That has to do with the brake lines. We'll hide that one as well. So now we're down to the basics. And notice I did, just for low poly, I put in these pins to make it look a little more realistic. And those are also the pivot points for these torque links. So it's actually all kind of simple, because you build one part at a time, and you don't worry about all the other stuff. Just one part at a time, and you build it top down. So we've identified the parts. We're going to build starting top down, starting with the upper gear strut here, and that gets linked to its parent. And then we build the next thing down, which will be the lower gear, the oleo. We'll link that to the top gear. And then we'll build the axle, link that to the lower gear. Then we'll build the wheel and tire and link that to the axle. And then we'll finalize by building the torque links. And the top torque link obviously has to link to the top gear strut here. And the lower one has to link to the lower gear. And that's how you get your action. Okay, that's how all that works. Alright, let's select all these parts. A lot of parts in here, as you can see. But don't let it overwhelm you. We probably won't be building all these parts. There's some brake stuff still in here. So let's just freeze this. So we have it for kind of a size and position reference, but we're going to build off to the side here, so we'll have that. We'll have it for reference, and it won't be in our way. Okay, so in this particular aircraft, I had absolutely no data on the size of the tires or wheels, size of these struts, and a lot of times you won't have that. A lot of times you can look up the size of the tires for a particular aircraft, and you'll get the wheel size as well. So sometimes that data is available, sometimes not. You just have to draw it to the 3 view. That's about all you can do. But you know, it's a lot of artistic license in some of these areas, because there's just no data available for it. Particularly these experimental aircraft. So let's get started. We're already 14 minutes of this, so we'll probably just get a few parts built, and but we'll work along, get as much done as we can, and then we'll break it off and finish it up in the next video. Alright, so let's go to the top view since we're going to start with a cylinder. And I guesstimated this to be about 6 1/4 inches. So if I pull up my handy dandy converter here, 6.25 inches is 1.58 meters. So let's just go with 0.16 meters for that. We're going to use the cylinder, standard primitive cylinder, and we're going to attempt to use the keyboard entry. We haven't used that yet for you. And we're just going to place all this at the center of Gmax universe. So for the radius, we want 0.16. And we'll tab to the height. And the height, I think I measured, was 32 inches. So let's see how that converts here. 32 inches is 0.81 meters. This will get us in the ballpark and give us a good starting point. Alright, and then we'll just create that, see if that works for us. Frankly, I seldom use that. Where did it go? There it is, way over yonder. Alright, that's fine. So let's just pull this back here some and go to the left viewport. You remember I said we were going to, it's kind of large, isn't it? I must have been, go back and check this, 6.25 to whatever, 0.16. Radius. Oh, duh. It's supposed to be half. That's the diameter. I need half that, so 0.08. Duh. Okay, height segments. What we're going to do is build this, and this, and this, and this, all the way down to here. So we can actually do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, we got 5. Guess that'll work. All right. So let's just commence to make this editable. Sorry. And let's just ignore back facing is off, so we're good to go. We'll pull this up to about here. We're just going to get in the ballpark with these. So it's not anything to be too upset about. Alright, we're going to just scale this one down a little bit to represent where the bottom of this comes in to house the seal. And we'll pull it up a little. Gonna give it that finished look. Maybe a little more. Alright, and not the way I was planning to do this, but this will work. Might be alright. Let's go to poly mode. And we'll just extrude this. We have to do that in local mode so that the extrusion goes out in all directions per the poly faces. We'll kind of do something like that. Zoom in here so you can see a bit. And click off that, and then we want little brain fade here. Sorry. Yeah, let's move this up a little. I mean, we're just playing here, folks. It's all a part of making it. Let's see if we can grab. I'm not sure I can grab those vertices. Oh, okay. Another way around it then. We'll grab the polys. Oops, we had the polys. We just want these though. And then we're going to go to our trusty non-uniform scale. We'll pull this down to give it kind of that collar look, if you will. And if you don't like the proportion of that, you can pull it up a bit. Alright, so, oops, I'm going to go to edge now. I want that horizontal edge, so let's just deselect those. And, you know, just like if you don't do enough segments, there's always ways to bring a segment back to you. So we're going to just chamfer this line here, and we'll have the same thing we started with when we had the segments we needed down there. So just do the same process here. And now if I was smart, I would have recalled how much extrude I did on that other one so I could get this. But, you know, we'll have it so close you'll never see it, never notice the difference from 20 feet, 30 feet. Let's see if that's, yeah, it'll work. Not quite the same size, but it doesn't have to be. It just depends on what it's there for. What we want to do is just kind of give it some visual realism, even though it may not be exactly the way it is. But we want to add something here so it's just not a straight bar running up here, because there are things attached, and it's the cost is worth it. Now that we have that, we can select all the polys and re-smooth it so it looks right to the eye. Clear all that, auto smooth, and hopefully that fixes it up somewhat. You can see we have a different taper here, and that's okay, but if you want to clean that up, you can do that by grabbing the vertices and moving them, or using a non-uniform scale on these polys here. So either way, so we have that part built. So we can move on to the lower gear. So we'll go back to top and create that lower gear cylinder with a keyboard entry, and that is 4¼ inches, so that would be 2 1/8. So we need to get the metric for that, metric equivalent of that, 2.13. I guess is close enough. 0.054. That'll work. Okay, 0.054. And the height wise, actually I didn't have a height on that, so let's just make it about 16 inches. What is that? 16 inches would be 0.4. Close enough. We can adjust it once we are in editable mode. So we're going to pull that down here, and then go to the left viewport. And get down here where we can see what we're doing. And this needs to come down to, yeah, about there. Yeah, we need 1, 2, 3 sections here. Is that right? 1. No, it depends if you want. Anyway, you want to do the tapering. It doesn't matter. So we'll just, first of all, we'll kind of center it with this guy here. And if we turn on edged faces, you can see we can line up the dilly whoppers just fine. These polys are, these sides are a little heavy for this gear. You can easily get away with like 10 or 12, and it will look smooth as silk in the sim. So this is poly heavy, so 18 sides is just really more than enough, unless you've got it visually in your from your virtual cockpit. I would not go this high. If you're in FSX, that's fine. If you want to go that high and you're not concerned about your vertex count on your mapping sheets. So that's centered, as you can see by the line. So let's come do our work now. We need to let's see, convert this to editable poly. We're going to select poly, this down a bit. And then we're going to create this section right here, this fat section, if you will, or if I will, if somebody will. Let's see, extrude, and we want local. This is a pretty big fella here. We'll just eyeball it for now. And get that done. Let's pull this down. Actually, let's do this. Let's just go ahead and get our tapers built in. These are pretty good tapers on that, so, and then let's kill off this bottom part. And then we'll just pull this down to about there. Looks a little bigger than the one on the left, doesn't it? It's alright. Well, I'm just showing you technique, and showing you what tools to use, or different ways to use your tools to build stuff like this. And there's, good grief, there's enough ways. There's as many ways to do these things as there are people doing it. So, just because I do it one way doesn't make it best. It's just the way I do it. So don't worry about things. You can do things a lot of different ways. So we've got this part and we've got this part, and that's really all we need. So let's just kill those and just pull these up in here. Now our gear is fully extended at 100, as you can see, and then it starts rotating back. So at 100, that's as long as it's going to be. So this part here only needs to be as long as it hides up in here on its full extension. You're good to go. That seems to be. Now we can scale these down a touch because it seems just a smidgen fat. So maybe something like that. Notice that both these sides fold together as well, and that's because that's the way this regular scale feature works. So, but that's all right. There's nothing wrong with that. All right. Now that we have this done, let's link it to the one above it, because when this one rotates, we need this to follow it. So when this is retracting or extending, this one needs to follow it. Okay, so we've got that done. We need an axle. Let's see, we are almost 30 minutes into this, so we'll probably finish up the axle and then end this video and come back with building the wheel and tire, and which shouldn't take too long, and the scissors, torque links, and then we'll be ready to animate, and then we can finalize with a retracting strut here. So let's go ahead and build this cylinder here. We'll just build something about like that. One thing, Gmax doesn't like you to build something real small for whatever reason. We'll just get it down to, I think, about 0.04. A little small. 0.06. See what that looks like. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Now we surely don't need that many sides on that either, so let's just bring this down. I used 8 sides. That's really good enough because you can barely see this thing. And we certainly don't need more than one segment, so we want to keep our polys to 8, 9, and 10. And actually this side is going to be in the tire, in the wheel, and we can delete the poly on any hidden polys like that. Just delete them. You don't need them, and you don't need the overhead. So we just pull this in to there, and we'll adjust the length as necessary when it comes to putting the wheel on here. Alright, so that's it. Sorry, poly heavy. Wait, I should have started that much lower. I'd recommend 10, 12 for this. 12 sides, that's all you need. So we've got a good start here, and that needs to be centered, and that's easy enough to do on this. We'll just right up here to about there, and that looks pretty centered. And it needs to be linked, if we didn't do that, to there. So there, we got 3 parts built. Everything's linked. Everything's not smooth, but it can be. Now on this, because these are different kinds of machined parts, I don't actually like to smooth them all together. See if it did or not. No, it actually turned out pretty nice here. Yeah, it's good. That's the way I want it. That's looking good. So we'll wrap up this video, and in the next part of this mini-series, we'll come back and do the wheel and the tire. Actually, we're going to do them at the same time, all pretty much one piece. But it's an interesting little process, and it's easier than you think. So thanks for listening, and I hope this was instructional in building this. Let's not worry about the animating right now. That's the easy part, actually, and it only takes a few seconds. We'll get back to that on the next video. And any comments, suggestions, post them below. And you guys have a good day. Thanks.